Meanwhile, the Department of Basic Education is calling for public comment on proposed amendments to some of its policies. Now, to tell us more about this, we are now joined by Basic Education Department spokesperson Elijah Mhlanga, and he joins us via our Zoom link. Elijah, thank you so much for joining us here on the late edition. Of course, you are calling on for the public, to comment on the amended national policy. Why is it being amended in the first place?
Good evening, Bali. That's correct. We are asking members of the public to assist us with input regarding the policy that we use to determine school calendars. The COVID-19, which took place in 2020, caused major problems for us as a system. We were forced to change the school calendar because schools were forced to close, and we needed to make amendments. And the process that led to the change of the school calendar was not provided for in the policy, which means we changed working outside the policy, but there was a crisis that we needed to address. That's the first thing. The second thing is that we are saying the policy needs to change so that we are able to determine when schools should close. At the moment, schools at the end of the year, they close on the 15th of December or somewhere there in the second week. And we are saying that the policy should allow us to determine the date in the first week of December on which we can close schools. So those are some of the matters that we are addressing with the review that is currently underway.
And perhaps if you can maybe just give us an insight in terms of the other amendments which are taking place. I mean, what are the other amendments which you are proposing and you want change? I know that the calendar is also one of the aspects. Are there any more?
Yes, they are. We are also, the current school calendar says that for minority religious groups, we give them not more than 2 religious holidays in a year. So we are saying the policy should allow us to give the head of department in a province the power to make a decision on the number of days that can be given for religious holidays. And also this has come as a result of representations which were made by organizations and individuals who are affected by this particular provision. So we are saying it is important that the HOD in a particular province makes that decision, because the provinces are not the same. But we want members of the public to tell us if that is something that they agree with. If not, then please send it in writing to us. But the other one that we are also addressing in the amendments, the proposed amendments, is the insistence. You know, in the past, the policy said that the department could consult members of the public by publishing a gazette in a newspaper. That was the requirement in the policy, but things have changed now. So we are requesting members of the public to consider the proposal by the department that a newspaper cannot be the only medium through which we'll consult them in the process of developing the actual school calendar. We should also be able to use other media such as the department's website or social media or any other platform which would enable us to reach people where they are. So that's one other change which we have thrown in among the set of proposed amendments that we want South Africans to apply their mind to.
And Elijah, you know, you also spoke of COVID-19 and how teaching and learning was affected during that period. And one would ask, when it comes to the policy of online learning, is this something that the department is also proposing in this new amendment? Because one would say that you had already moved and made so much progress there when it comes to some schools actually getting access to teaching and learning through online platforms. What does it look like there when it comes to, you know, the policies of online learning? And is it something that you are exploring as a department?
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, COVID has forced us to consider other possibilities and other options as well that we can utilize to try help learners to learn. So the objective of this entire process of amending the policy on the determination of school calendars is really to save as many days as possible that can be allocated for teaching and learning. And we are also trying to adjust the school calendar to ensure that we have more days for teaching and learning than we already had, because we realized that during COVID, we lost so many days such that we're still struggling to recover. You will see that even the current class of Matric 2023, they were the worst affected. Yes, last year we said the last class was the worst affected, but the current class of 2023 were the last to go back to school in 2020, which means they never wrote an exam in 2020, they never wrote an exam in 2021, and even in 2022, because they were in grade 9 back then. So now they're in grade 12. Because of the losses that have happened and because of the many changes that we've made in the school calendar, a lot of disruptions have taken place. So what we are trying to do now is to say, how do we assist our learners to find as much time that they can find through the tool of the school calendar so that learning is not interrupted. So online learning is one of the options as well that as a department we are exploring. In fact, we've even developed a framework to assist online schools and other schools that are using online learning as a platform so that they're able to support learners whether they're in school or not. So all those things have now been thrown into sharp focus. That's why you'll be seeing different amendments that we'll be making in the policies and the pieces of legislation that we use in the basic education sector, all because of the COVID crisis, which is now assisting as an advantage because we are now able to tighten certain areas in the system that really needed attention, but we were not aware of were it not for the crisis that was brought on us by the coronavirus.
And Elijah, what has been the reception when it comes to this amendments being done to the policy? I'm sure some of the SGBs have responded to you in terms of making up for the time lost during the COVID-19 period. What is the reception like in terms of amending these days?
Yeah, that's a good question as well. You know, we work with a whole range of stakeholders, and you're correct, SGBs form a critical component in the sector. So what you see published is what we would have discussed internally in the sector with our stakeholders, alerting them to the proposed changes that we are making. So we are confident that the draft that we have put out for public comment is supported by stakeholders, and we now want them to urge others to also make their input so that they can enrich the final version that we are going to have and that we are going to use in the sector going forward. So we are taking everybody on board, the teacher unions, the SGB associations, we've got civil society as well. And of course, there's business. Let's not forget the business community in the drafting of the school calendar, because they are affected by the structure of the school calendar, whether it is a single calendar or it's what we call the staggered calendar, where schools in a certain set of provinces open at a certain time and then the others open later. All of those things we take into account because it's got to do with the movement of traffic on our roads, but it also got to do with the patterns when it comes to the hospitality industry as to when people are leaving their holiday destinations, going back home because schools are reopening. So we have a much wider stakeholder base that we need to consider when working on stuff like this. That's why we appreciate even this interview, because it helps us to reach out to all our stakeholders and other persons that are interested in the process to also give us their input. We've also provided an email address which people can use to communicate with the department on this matter.
All right. Thank you very much, Elijah. That is Elijah Mhlanga, the spokesperson for the Basic Education Department, saying that, of course, they are proposing to amend some of the school days. Of course, these are the school days which were lost during the COVID-19 pandemic.